In the early days of the Clone Wars, the Separatist Navy unleashed a mighty beast upon the galaxy when they deployed their first Subjugator-Class battlecruiser. The Malevolence immediately began wreaking havoc on Republic forces using its unique ion cannon superweapon to disable Republic Venator-class Star Destroyers, and using an array of turbolasers to decimate the now incapacitated Republic forces. The first few instances of attacks like this were kept relatively under wraps by Separatist forces, who managed to completely wipe out Republic troops, leaving no survivors and no records of the attack. However, after an assault on a trio of Venator-class Star Destroyers led by Jedi General Plo Koon ended with a few survivors being recovered by the Republic, the word on the Separatists' new superweapon was out. Realizing that their element of surprise was quickly fading, the Separatists began planning a new attack. A plan to use this superweapon and this new battlecruiser against a Republic medical station. Meanwhile, a fleet of Republic Venators who had been pursuing the Malevolence began planning an attack. They would deploy a flight of BTL Y-Wing bombers ahead of their advance in an effort to cut off the Malevolence and disable it before it can carry out an attack on the medical station. The plan was for these bombers to assault the shield generator, turrets, and bridge on the top of the Malevolence, disabling its weapons and guidance systems, and leaving the ship vulnerable to other forms of attack. These bombers were deployed ahead of the strike force to deal a knockout blow so that the Venators could mop up what was left. And after a perilous journey through a large nebula, the bombers arrived at the medical station at the same time as a fleet of Pelta-class frigates arrived to pick up wounded clones. However, shortly after the arrival of the bombers and the frigates, the Malevolence jumped out of hyperspace into the area. Immediately seeing the threat, the frigates disconnected from the medical station and began attempting to flee with whatever survivors they could. However, seeing these Pelta-class frigates attempting to escape, the Malevolence was positioned and the ion cannon was fired, which ultimately disabled the fleet of Peltas. It's around this time that the Y-Wing bombers turned to engage the Malevolence, attempting to carry out their planned attack run. In response, the Malevolence launched wings of vulture droids in an attempt to intercept the approaching Y-Wing bombers. After a brief dogfight, the decision was made on board the Malevolence to attempt to use their ion cannon to gain the upper hand. The Malevolence firing an ion cannon blast towards the ongoing dogfight. Seeing the incoming ion cannon blast, the Y-Wings immediately took evasive action, trying to fly up and around the wave of energized particles. Most of the flight of Republic bombers were able to effectively avoid the ion cannon, however, 3 separate bombers were disabled in the blast. This ion cannon shot also, however, did manage to disable all of the vulture droids deployed by the Malevolence. With the vulture droids disabled, the Y-Wings were now able to approach the Malevolence from above, carrying out their original attack plan. Meanwhile, the Malevolence was angled to fire its ion cannon at the medical station, which would have disabled the medical equipment on board, keeping the clones on the station alive. Realizing this, Jedi General Anakin Skywalker, who was leading the assault from one of the Y-Wings, reprioritized their targets to focus on the ion cannons, allowing the bombers to swing around the side of the Malevolence and fire a series of proton torpedoes against the pillars holding up the ion cannon, an action which ultimately disabled the Separatist superweapon and crippled the Malevolence. With the destruction of the ion cannon, the Malevolence now lacked its primary weapon. It's about this time that 3 Venator-class Star Destroyers arrived on scene to aid in the battle. These Venators quickly approached the now crippled Malevolence, which was attempting to turn and flee, and focused their fire on the engine sections of the vessel. As these 3 Venators laid into the aft segment of the Malevolence, they ultimately ended up disabling a good number of the Malevolence's engines and its hyperdrive. Without its hyperdrive, the Malevolence was now unable to escape. However, it's around this time that a Nubian transport, being used by a Republic senator, was captured and taken aboard the Malevolence to be held hostage. Realizing the situation, the order was given for the Venators to hold fire and simply pursue the Malevolence, while a group of Jedi, consisting of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, were sent on board the Malevolence to free the hostages. In the process, they were able to sabotage the Malevolence's guidance controls, and when the hyperdrive was repaired and activated, the ship ultimately jumped into a nearby moon, while the Republic saboteurs on board were able to slip away before the collision. This ultimately ended in the destruction of the Malevolence, the only Subjugator-class battlecruiser to see significant action during the war. In Legends, there were at least 2 other Subjugator-class battlecruisers, however they were both destroyed in port as opposed to in combat like the Malevolence herself. Ultimately, this battle was one of the first major engagements of the Clone Wars to involve an exotic weapon. The large ion cannon Canon on the Subjugator-Class battlecruiser, the Malevolence, was one of a kind, and the Republic had never faced anything like it before. One of the reasons why the Malevolence remained such a mystery until the attack on Plo Koon's forces. Ultimately, the Malevolence itself is a fascinating vessel, and if you'd like to learn more about how it was designed or utilized by the Separatists, I'll leave a link in the upper right-hand corner to a video I have on that. And if you have any other battles you'd like to see covered in future episodes of Battle Analysis and added to the archive, let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.